Hey everybody. So we're back um, working on the cleaning up our sprite class. Um, Last time around, we made a bunch of changes to the sprite class to make it easier for us to um, clean up a bunch of places that are kind of using it incorrectly at the moment. Um, Between that video and this video, I did a little more cleanup. I removed basically some instance variables that weren't really being used, and went ahead and set up some things that I was just setting here um, as optional arguments up here with defaults. Um, you'll see why I did that here in a minute. But yeah, this is kind of a good starting point to start looking at some of these places that are using Sprite and not really using it in a great way. The problem I have, in case you missed the last video, is we have, for example, board item here, which is inheriting from Sprite, but it's not really for any good reason other than it's overriding some defaults that could just be arguments. There were a lot more of these defaults before. That was part of what we did in the last video, was try to clean that up. But yeah, it's really not doing anything super useful. So usually if you use inheritance, we want to use it for specialization, and that's not really how we're using it here. And it could be a problem when if any of these classes like board items start having a lot of other kinds of behavior, because you can really only inherit from one thing at a time, and it'll be more clear that it's not really just a specialized version of Sprite. So anyway, that's kind of the direction going to be heading in this video. So I think I'm just going to start with board item because it's kind of the simplest of all of these. Maybe look at heart. It's kind of a similar thing. It might be easier to understand. Yeah. So really, if let's pull this over here, so it's kind of side by side with Sprite. So you can see the things that we're passing in are really the sprite sheet and the size of the sprite on the sprite sheet. So a good place to start with this would be, instead of overriding these inherited instance variables, let's just pass these in. So here we'll pass in sprite sheet. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not where I want to do that. What I want to do is I want to break the connection with sprite. So instead of doing that, we'll hold on to the position because we still want to pass that in. But kind of what we're heading towards is we want to get a sprite that is a new instance of sprite directly, not through inheritance. And we can pass in all the things that we actually care about. So we want to pass in a position. We want to pass in the sprite sheet that we want to use, which is going to be hearts. Now, I don't like just throwing in random strings and stuff in arguments. I like to kind of name things so it's easier to know what the thing is that you're passing in. So I'm going to just set it here, but I'm not going to do it as a, I'm just going to do it as a local. So here we'll pass in sprite sheet. And let's go ahead and drop these. I kind of like putting argument list split across lines. And then I'll do the same thing here. So, we could just drop a 50 in here, but no chance we're going to know what that means if we come back without having to go look at sprite. So I'd rather just do it here. I might even go as far as to call it sprite size or something. You notice too, it's almost starting to look like a little bit of a data clump again, which is the thing that we covered in the last video, because this is just a bunch of attributes of a sprite sheet. But let's roll with this for now. Don't want to worry about trying to make it perfect the first time around. So let's just go ahead and say sprite size. Notice we're also implying that the width and the height are the same, but so far for everything in this game they are. So we'll just roll with that for now. So now we have a sprite. We don't need these anymore. And since we're not inheriting, we're not going to call super. And I think we still want to, we could go about this a few ways, but I kind of like the heart class knowing that all the hearts should be on a certain layer, which is kind of what our z-index is doing there. So I think I'm okay with this. Yeah, so let's go with this for now. Let's just see if we can get this to work. Sorry for all the sniffling and coughing. I have a bit of a cold that's been carrying on, or allergies. So I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of broken specs. Yeah, so you notice our specs are breaking for a few reasons. Some of those are just that they're expecting a bunch of values to be set. But the other bigger problem down here is we no longer have a draw method for heart. And that's kind of ultimately what our sprite class was giving us, was the ability to draw heart. So what we want to do is we just want to make a draw method here, and we're just going to let sprite handle that. I'm actually going to make a private down here, private reader for sprite, just so I don't have to keep. I don't like referring to the instance variable if I don't have to outside of the initializer. So here we'll just say let sprite. Just go ahead and delegate that basically. And that's our public method there. Let's save that. So we should at least get rid of that one. And then all these other things are probably expectations that no longer apply. So let's take a look. Okay. Okay. So a few things here. Our default across the board now for a sprite is to use the first sprite in the sheet, and that's what this value is representing. So I'm just going to get rid of that. Also, giving that a better name would be good if we run into that elsewhere. Let's see, width of 50, is that relevant? I don't know if anything outside of here needs to know about the width of heart. So for now, I'm just going to take that out. I'll just comment it out for the time being. And then also, I don't know that anything outside of here needs to really know that hearts is the name of the sprite sheet that heart uses. So again, I'm just going to take that out. Heart also had a custom setter that I made more generic in previous commits, previous to the last video even, and had moved into sprite. So I don't really need to test that. I guess this is okay though. Although this isn't testing that it nullifies anything, so I guess we could just say changes the value. All right, let's see how we're doing. Okay, so we got a spec for position, line 8. Okay, so I don't know. Position might be something we want to make available outside of here. Usually anything that I pass in to the constructor I don't mind making available, so we'll just do that. Just make position up here. Yeah, I just realized too that this position is ambiguous. So for the time being, I'm going to put that on. Well, I shouldn't say it's ambiguous. It's going to use the one passed in, not the one that we modified. So let's do that. And then now we're down to value on the spec, not being what it should be. So what is it? Undefined method value for heart. Okay, so we're just not making that available as a reader, which I think is fine. We could though. I don't want to do that though till we have to, because I kind of want to change the name of that. So let's just. I don't think this is really adding anything here. Let's just make sure that that's covered on Sprite though. Yeah, so here's the exact same test on Sprite. So I'm just going to take it off over here. This test doesn't really add anything. Okay, so now we're good. Let's run the whole suite. Okay, so should be looking good. Let's try to run the game. See what we get. Okay, so we got something blowing up on us. Saying undefined method value equals for heart. All right. And I know why that is. So here we are trying to we're trying to change the tile that's being used in the heart sprite sheet based on which of these ones we want to show. And we're trying to do it directly on a value equals, because that used to be something we got for free from Sprite. So yeah, we need to write a slightly different version of this method. We basically want to pass the value equals right along to Sprite, so we're kind of delegating similar to this. So we kind of want to move in this direction, but let's go ahead and add a test for draw before we do that, and then so this is saying allow heart to receive sprite and return tile. Expect tile to receive draw. Okay. Something seems off there. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and write our value equals, which just delegates. So let's go ahead and describe that. So all we really want to do is we want to say we're just going to pass this right along to Sprite. So we'll say allow heart to receive Yeah, we could go about this a few ways. So we have an actual instance of heart. So let's just do the simplest thing. So we'll say expect heart dot value equals zero. Yeah, so we just, okay. Yeah, I think what I want to do is I just want to say expect heart dot sprite dot to receive value equals with 5, or with just say 1, um, and then we'll just call heart dot value equals 1, and we could even let this up here, let frame be 1. We've been calling these tile, so just to be consistent, I'm just going to call it tile, make it easier when we do a kind of search and replace on this stuff later. All right, so let's see that fail. So we haven't written the code and did not fail. And then let's implement it. Okay, so now it's saying private method called okay, so heart.sprite is private, so it's complaining because it doesn't from an outside caller doesn't have access to sprite, so it can't check that the value it can't check that value equals was called. I'm just going to go ahead and move sprite up here. Doesn't really bother me to have it available. We're actually going to switch things up in a minute here too, so that kind of makes sense. It'll make more sense. Okay, so it's now showing that it's being called, and instead of having it just be a reader, I'm going to actually switch this up a little bit and make a method. And I'm just going to take all this stuff, push it in here. And the thing that we want to do also is we don't want this to get called over and over, so we need to memoize it. We only really need to get this. We'll need to get this one time. And I'm just trying to figure out if I want to. If I want to keep these here, if I want to move these somewhere. These are really starting to feel more like, for the time being, kind of constants maybe. They really feel like attributes of some other class we don't have yet, which is something that describes the characteristics of a sprite sheet. I don't really like making them constants on this, so maybe I think I'm just going to do this. Return sprite if sprite. This will probably get simplified later when we pull these out someplace that's more appropriate. And that handles our memoization for us. Okay. Yeah, these things are delegating to. I'm just going to try and make them look more obvious. Not crazy about that. So let's go back to this. Maybe if this felt more like a section, it would help. Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of okay with that. Let's roll with it. So that's working. Let's see if all the specs are working. And then let's see if this works. So cool. So now we have the heart class working, and trying to decide if I want to do this for all the other places that are using Sprite first, or try to clean this kind of thing up a little bit. I think for the meantime, I'll leave this here. It might be nice to kind of do this with all the other classes. Some ideas might pop out about better ways to handle this. So yeah, so that was heart. So now we just want to go through and handle the other classes. I'm trying to see too, I'd like to move to strong to name parameters on these things. This is kind of nice because you can stop worrying about argument order with this. So yeah, let's give that a shot. So this is going to break a lot of other things because nothing is calling Sprite this way. Actually, I'm going to come back and do this later because it'll be easier to do it after we've updated all the other things that are using Sprite. So let's do that first. So board item is going to be one of these. Okay, so we're going to have, this is going to be a common method we're going to see across these different classes. And the values are just going to be different. So this is going to be items. This is going to be 100. And other than that, it's the same. Okay. And then we need to pass in our arguments. Or I'm sorry, we need to get rid of these because we're not using them. We're not calling super anymore. We don't have a sprite class to inherit from. These can get bumped over. Did we do that on heart? We did. Bump this one all the way over. Okay. All right, so let's see what we get. I bet the code will run for this, but the specs are not going to be passing for the same reasons. Oh, right, we forgot the delegates. So you can see there's a lot of common stuff here, which is kind of a sign. Don't really like copying things, so we're missing some kind of concept here. Okay. But our specs will be failing, so let's take a look at those. So we need to do something similar to what we did for sprite for board item. I'm just going to pull these things over here. It's a little bit easier when they're closer together. Okay, so again, this is the default tile, which we don't need to specify here. What do we do with that over here? Yeah, we just got rid of it for now. Same with sprite sheet. We're going to handle this stuff slightly differently. So, and again, value is a method that's already tested on sprite, so don't need to do it here. That should knock out a bunch of these. So now we're down to position. And I think I just made position and add a reader over here. Yeah. Okay, so specs are passing. Let's run this again. So we're looking good. So, yeah, I think we got some progress here. Seeing some patterns as we do this. Mainly that you notice we're doing the same things over and over, which is kind of a code smell. There's probably a concept missing here that we could clean up or unify. Okay, so let's figure out what our next thing is that's inheriting from sprite. Okay, so board map. Okay, so looks like board map's our next one. And we're going to do the same thing. Is it looking awfully similar? So I'm actually going to, again, take all of this stuff and I'm going to put it in here. So map is our sprite sheet and it is 100 pixels in size. Get rid of these. And our spec should be failing for all the same reasons that we saw before. So again, going to come in here and none of these really matter to me at this point. This is redundant. I think position's already available, so yep, that's passing now. And now we have our tile map still working. That was the one that we just updated. So yeah, so we just made a pass that eliminated the inheritance through sprite. And I just want to see, there's so much duplication here. I'm trying to figure out how I want to handle that. One thing that would be nice to do, well, actually, let's make this a commit. So this works. Okay, so there we go. We got a green build and or specs are passing, I should say, and then everything still runs. So that's always a good spot to do a commit. Another thing I noticed is we don't need to, if we're not inheriting, we don't need to require that. Oh, you know what? Our board map was still inheriting, so let's make sure everything still works. And it does. We're still good here. All right. So say we were to take these and set them in here. If we do that, we can reduce this to, we could set up private readers for these. So we're kind of moving the data up. So now our methods, our methods are differing by the data that's included. So if we can move the data up, I think it'll help us figure out how we want to collapse these a little bit more. So again, I'm going to pull these up. And then we need to be careful that we do or equals on these, or else it'll generate it every single time. And we got to do the private thing again. Oh, I started on board map. Okay. Yeah, here's the one. Should do or equals. Okay. And do a similar thing here. Okay. And yeah, I don't think anything will change on our test. Let's just try running it again too. Okay, so everything's looking good. So now we have all these three or four classes that have these exact same methods. So we could do something like, so I'd like to remove those differences. I was trying to think about how I want to remove that. So we could do like pull these out into like a module that could be reused across these classes. Be one way to tackle it. We could make some other object that's responsible for all this stuff. That it feels kind of like overkill. This object's really already not doing too. These kinds of objects are already not doing a whole lot. So I think I may hold off on doing anything with this for the time being. I'm kind of, these are basically convenience and delegation methods. So it'd still be nice to remove the redundancy, but I'm not super worried about it. But yeah, I think as we start working with this more, we'll get a better idea about what's the right way to remove all that duplication. Because as we add more of these things that use sprites are all going to have the similar set of delegations here and here, or yeah, making these things available. I mean, the other thing that we could do is, if we don't want to have these, we could set these as constants or something for now. And then we don't have to set them up here because they're not really part of initialization because they're not going to change from one instance to another. So we could do it this way. This isn't too bad. This eliminates a little bit of this. And we can test those constants. I kind of like that. I still wish there was a nicer looking way to get all this stuff, these delegation methods pulled together. Maybe I'll try this. All right, let's roll with this. I like this. A little bit shorter. So again, we won't need any of this stuff. Can switch this up to be like that. Move these up to here to be constants. Okay. Do the same thing here. Okay, looking good. And then let's just copy over that stuff from here. So again, we have copies of things, but it's not bothering me as much. Some of it's delegation. Some of it's kind of the boilerplate sprite setup calls. But yeah, there's probably still something missing from here, which is like heart sprite sheet or sprite manager or something. There's something in between. There's just something missing from here, but we'll figure it out as we do more of this. So I'll just go ahead and save this. Tests are still passing. Let's run them all. Check the game again. Yeah, everything looks good. So we could do, now that we move those to constants, it might be nice to do like describe, I don't know, sprite sheet maybe. This is a constant on the class, so I'm going to have to use a class, not the instance. And let's just try this. Okay. So the other thing that we have is sprite size. And these are smaller ones, so these are going to be 50. So this feels good. Now we have tests again for these two things which we had lost in our previous iterations. So for the board items, it's going to be items, and everything but hearts is size 100. Those should pass. This did not pass. Oh, because I'm using the wrong class. Okay, now we're passing. Yeah, I think I can do described class, I think. Let me see. Let me try this. Yeah, let's use that, just so we're not repeating. If we ever had to rename board item or something, it'd be nice to not have to search and replace the class name all over the place. Let's do the same thing there. One thing that was bothering me here too is this stuff is class level, this stuff is instance level, so I'll move those up. And similarly here, we're going to do copy these, drop in here. And yeah, you'll notice like I don't have to rename described class now, which is kind of cool. This is going to be map and 100. So cool. So we have more spec coverage and everything's still working. So sounds like a good place to commit to me. And yeah, these little changes we're making, they probably feel like they're not the most exciting thing, but it's kind of nice to you bite off small chunks that are manageable to do in 15 or 20 minutes and not get lost in the weeds. So this is how to characterize this. Let's see. Let's look at the diff. So this is really about cleaning up our implementation. Okay. And let's push that up. Okay. So yeah, I think we're in a better place. So the reason we had gone down this road in the first place is we want to introduce a sprite for a player. We do not currently have a sprite for player. And I'm just trying to figure out if we want to tackle that now or move on to the next thing. Or sorry, wait for the next video for that. I think it's going to be pretty easy. Let's just give it a shot real quick. I'm just going to spike on it without the test just to see how hard it's going to be. But I think we'll be okay. So you can see on the left there under sprite sheets, our sprite sheet is called player. I happen to know that the size is 100, which kind of makes sense because player is about the same size as the tiles. And then we're going to have to copy over these methods, which I told you I wasn't too crazy about. So yeah, the more and more copies of this that we make, the more I'd like to find a way to wrap this up somehow. But anyway, we'll just hop over to player here real quick. Okay, so we can probably get rid of the draw method until it's doing something more interesting. But I have a feeling it won't be too long before it's doing something more interesting, so I'm just going to move that one on up. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll get rid of this one. Let's get rid of these because they're not doing anything. And I have a feeling if we run this, it's going to work. Huh. Okay, so that's why those are there. They have to be there. We do not have to define draw though because it gets redefined below. All right, well, not exactly what we want, but we do have our player rendered up there in the top left. So that is a start. Yeah, so what's happening here is the position we have is not the it's the position, it's the tile that the player should be positioned on within the board. So that's why we're getting it rendered up at the top left corner because it's a very low number. It's basically close zero or close to zero for all the coordinates. So we'll need to do something smarter for the figuring out where we want to render that sprite. We'll basically need to make it like relative to the board's position and multiply by the size of the tiles and all that kind of stuff. But I think this is probably a good place to stop. I'm not actually going to commit this because I would like to test this out, make sure we have coverage for it. And but anyway, yeah, I think this is a good stopping point for now. And I think in the next video I'll start actually getting the player's position working correctly. And then once we've got that, it'll start being pretty easy to start doing some more interesting things like we can, let me pull this up here. We can start loading in different items pretty easily, loading in an exit for the stage, so that won't be too hard. So I think, yeah, the next few videos will be probably a little more interesting and a little more visual feedback as we're going through things. But yeah, thanks for hanging through to the end of this. And if you missed previous videos, this series covers building this up from nothing. So I recommend going back and starting at the beginning. I'll leave links on the video, but you can find the whole series here in my YouTube channel. And excuse me. I also have a thread going over here on the TIG source forum, but it really doesn't add a whole lot to what's on the channel. So I would recommend going to the YouTube channel. And then if you want to, you can check out my site. I kind of post about this and other development related stuff on there. And then you can find me on Twitter and the links below the video. But yeah, thanks again for following along, and I'll see you next time.